Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a minute. We'll wait for people to keep rolling in. Thanks for joining us. We'll just give it another minute before we get started. All right, well, it seems like we have a critical mass. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'm Jeanette Brown. I'm the Senior Director of Public Affairs at SCAM. Thank you for joining us for this workshop. This is a series we started about 2 years ago where we invite a developer member to showcase one of their projects and really tell us about the challenges and the opportunities that they had to go through to get a development done. We're very excited to have a community of friends with us today to talk about Lorena Plaza. So we have Dora Gala, who's the CEO, and Anna Kubara, a project manager. And they're going to tell you about this project and the very many hurdles that they went through to break ground recently. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Jeanette. Hi, everyone. So I'm Dora Leon Gallo. I'm the president and CEO for Community Friends. I'm really excited to finally be able to share with you kind of the whole saga of Lorena Plaza. We were just talking to Jeanette before the webinar started about, the couple of false starts. We thought we'd be doing this last year, but even up until last year, we had some challenges, and we're happy to share that with you, lessons learned, and how to avoid what happened to us for your projects, which there are things that have happened along the way that will hopefully make it impossible for our situation to be part of anybody else's in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna, and she's going to run through the agenda and what we're planning to cover today.
Great. Thanks, Dora. So there's a lot to cover when it comes to Lorena Plaza, and we're going to try to touch on as much as we can during this presentation. So we'll be covering an overview of the project and its development timeline, how we acquired the site, and the hurdles that we faced to secure entitlements and to build community support, what financing we obtained, how the design and the program has changed over the life of the project. And we'll talk about some of the construction challenges that we've experienced so far. And I think at the end, Dora is also going to touch on kind of the significance of the Lorena Plaza project within the affordable industry in Los Angeles. So Lorena Plaza is on a Metro-owned site located next to the Gold Line in Boyle Heights. We've worked really closely with the Metro Joint Development Team through this entire development process. They've been a very patient and supportive partner for the past 15 years. Lorena is a 4-story mixed-use development that includes 49 units, 7,500 square feet of commercial space, and also has a semi-subterranean garage. The 49 units are a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, and 3-bedrooms that will serve homeless and low-income households between an income range of 30 to 50% AMI. And there's also a 50% preference for veterans. Some of the on-site amenities include a community room with a full kitchen. We have a computer room, a fitness room. There's a large courtyard in the middle of the development that will have a barbecue area and a playground for children, property management and case management offices, and of course, on-site laundry and bike storage. We've also listed here the great team we've been working with. So our architect, GGA, we're working with AMJ for construction management. Portrait Construction is our general contractor, and a community of friends is going to be providing services and property management at Lorena Plaza. So you can see here that the development timeline spans about 15 years. And as we move through this presentation, we'll dive a little deeper into some of the barriers that the project has faced that will hopefully help fill in some of the gaps in the timeline. But let's start back in 2007. So Metro put out a request for proposals for this site while they were still building the Gold Line. Our proposal was selected. I think the Gold Line construction completed around 2009, and that's when the site became vacant. And we signed our ENA with Metro in 2013. We submitted entitlements in 2015 and received approvals in 2016, but our CEQA approval was challenged, and it took 2 years to obtain final CEQA approval from the city. Unfortunately, within about a month of our CEQA approval, a CEQA lawsuit was filed against the project, which would kind of delay the project for another 2 years. So once the CEQA lawsuit was settled in early 2020, we were able to secure all soft financing within about a year. And then we received a tax credit award in June 2021. The project closed on construction in December 2021, but before we could start construction on the actual project, we had to re-abandon an oil well on site, which took about 6 months. So we officially started construction on the project in June 2022.
Okay, so I have been the lucky person at a Community Friends who's been with this project from the very beginning. So I'm going to take you through the acquisition of the site process and then a couple of other slides relating to entitlements and community support. So as Anna mentioned, it was very interesting for Metro to have gone through the process of selecting a developer for the site before the goal line was even done. The site on the corner of Lorena Street and First Street is next to Evergreen Cemetery on one side. On the other side is El Mercado, which is a very well-known institution, cultural institution in the community of Boyle Heights. So we were selected, but nothing happened for 2 years while we waited for the goal line to be completed. The site was used as a staging area, and so there were all these equipments on there. And I believe that the goal line was completed in November of 2009. And if you all remember, those of you who's still doing affordable housing work during that time period, it was pretty much when the Great Recession hit, in 2008, 2009, 2010. It took us a while to recover. So when Metro handed the site over to us and said, okay, you guys ready to sign the ENA and begin that process, we realized that what we originally proposed in 2006 is very different than what perhaps we can build or get financed in 2010. So it took us a couple of years to figure out what we can build. And some of the timeline I'm going to talk about is going to be kind of running concurrently. When we changed the design, we met with the council office to try to make sure that they were okay with this. Also a new council member who had assumed the position at that time. And there were a lot of negotiations. There was work with the community, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. Some members of the community were not supportive of that particular location as affordable housing. They had alleged during community meetings that Metro had promised a park. Metro says they never promised a park. So we kind of got caught in that three-way, conversation with the community and Metro about what was supposed to be there. It did take us a while. After a 2-year very concerted process with the community, we did get 15-to-1 support from the neighborhood council, at which stage then Metro became comfortable signing the ENA. The JDA process also involved the JDA wasn't signed until we can resolve the planning approval process and the CEQA process, which is why there was that 8-year gap right there. Within that 8 years, it was 2 years of community engagement, 3 years of our entitlements being in limbo, 2 years of litigation, and then obviously looking for a financial path forward. And then there were some site constraints that led to the ground lease not being signed for another few months. And I don't know if Anna, you want to touch upon some of the site challenges about the dimensions, or did you want me to do that?
Yeah. So I think Dora touched on this a little bit, but after we were selected through the RFP process, we had learned that the actual site dimensions differed from the information that was provided in the RFP, in part because the parcel area also includes a Metro substation. So you can see in this photo, we share this is one parcel, and we share a parcel with the substation to the north of the project site. So it did take some time to redesign the project based on the correct dimensions. And sharing this parcel with the substation also required some extra work and coordination with Metro to determine the ground lease area, and the project's property line boundaries. I think lastly, one site condition that presented some challenges for us was that the site is it's oddly sloped. So the highest part of the site is the southwestern corner here, and it slopes diagonally down towards Lorena Street across two different zoning codes. So this definitely presented some challenges for the design team in making sure that we were abiding by all of the zoning and land use restrictions across the site.
Next slide. Okay, so this is probably where we're going to spend some time. So entitlements. All right. This is probably the process where things went really south for us and for the project. So as Anna mentioned, we submitted for entitlements in 2015, planning approvals and environmental approvals. And one of the things that was really difficult and even entering the process, we couldn't believe we had to do this. We were pretty much zoned by right, but we had two on-menu items that we needed for density bonus incentives. One's related to the transitional height because of the cemetery, and then we had to average a floor area ratio and density because, as Anna said, we crossed two commercial, we crossed a residential zone and a commercial zone. Two on-menu items, SB 1818, the density bonus ordinance at the state level, authorized local governments to, or actually require local governments to create on-menu and off-menu items. But for the city of Los Angeles, they decided that even on-menu items had to go through a discretionary approval process, which then subjected us to CEQA review and a public review process. So the other thing that happened during this process is working with the council office is that we had redesigned the project from originally what we submitted in 2006 to the current realities of 2010. And one of the things that we kept working on to secure support from the council office had to do with the fact that at the time, some of you may remember that the city of Los Angeles required developers to get a letter of support from the council office in order to receive funding. That was not required anymore, but at the time it was required. So we had to design and redesign. We had, in order to get that support from both the financing standpoint and the entitlement standpoint from the council office, they also really wanted us to have community support. And as I mentioned, there was some opposition from the community. And increasingly, as we listened to the community comments, it became very clear, which I'll touch upon again later also, that the reasons for some of the folks who were in opposition to the project had nothing to do with the project itself, but everything to do with the people that we were putting in this particular apartment building, which is people who've experienced homelessness and had a mental illness. That is a community and friends mission. We never hid that. That was always in our proposal to Metro and to the city. And then there were some people who I don't know if they didn't pay attention to it, but they essentially said that we had misled the community about who we were serving. And so there were a lot of negative comments about people who are homeless and people who had a mental illness, very clearly discriminatory comments. So we had to battle that during the whole entitlement process. But the city, the planning department approved the entitlements, and they approved our the environmentals for the project too in 2016. But our next door neighbor, El Mercado, kind of led the effort to oppose the project and filed an appeal. That appeal lands in the Planning and Land Use Management Committee of the City Council. And the council member for the district was at the time council member Jose Rizar, and he chaired the Plum Committee. And when the appeal landed in his committee, he sat on it for over 400 days, did not hear the item at all. So we were in limbo for over a year, pushing for him to schedule it. And it got to the point where we finally said, look, we understand you don't support the project, but if we could at least schedule it and you can deny the project and approve the appeal, it can at least get us to council so we can do our business. And we finally got agreement for him to schedule it. And I had several colleagues who knew what was happening to us in the entitlement process. And I have to give a lot of credit, you'll see in the next slide, the providers lines for LA County really stepped in. We had over 40 organizations write letters to the Plum Committee and to the City Council, and over 25 organizations came out to express support for this project. It is rare. All of us are so busy. It is rare for us to kind of stick our nose out for other people. And I am so heartened by the support that we got from the affordable housing community and the League of Women Voters, the LA Chamber of Commerce, the building trades. They all came out to testify in support of the project. United Way did as well. But to no avail. In the Plum Committee, the committee upheld the appeal, meaning they denied they did not support the environmental approvals. So it went to City Council that way. When it went to City Council, it took another several months for it to be scheduled for City Council. And when the letters started arriving at a number of different City Council offices, mail asking other council members to overturn the Plum Committee recommendation, that was when the council president took notice and many other council members. And there were people who met with other council members from other districts trying to help us secure enough votes to overturn Plum's recommendation. There was a pause. It was on calendar for council, off calendar council several times. So it took another 6 months before we got a council hearing. And during that time period, the LA Times wrote several articles, both articles as well as editorials in the LA Times. And then it also actually landed as an article in the New York Times as well. So there was a lot of public interests that were outside the city. And I don't know if it's a combination of some council members making comments or if it was the press, however it was, we ended up having Councilman Huizar flip on the council floor and ended up moving to overturn his own recommendation in Plum Committee to support the project. And that didn't happen until March 2018. So you can see the 2-year period, 1 year where he held it in committee, another year for me to kind of get it through the council process. It was pretty incredible feat and a great feeling when that happened. But within a month, El Mercado filed a lawsuit, a CEQA lawsuit, and we were in the legal court at that point in time. It took over a year to hear a hearing, and then another, 9 months, I think. Actually, it took like a little over a year to get a hearing. And it took the judge a little bit while to issue his determination. And the bottom line is that we had won the lawsuit. So we were celebrating. 2 months later, El Mercado filed an appeal to the Second District Courts. And so we had to wait. 4 months after that, through a lot of conversations, we ended up resolving the lawsuit and got the court to dissolve the litigation in January 2020. And that allowed us to immediately move forward to applying for funding and to sign the JDA with Metro. So that was kind of the entitlement process. And let's go to the next slide. And all along, these things were happening simultaneously, right? So I talked about the community. So 10 years of community engagement, working with the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council, with its various committees. I want to identify some really key partners. ELAC was incredible. ELAC had community members that supported the project. You can see the middle slide. They were constantly asking for updates, and then they also came out to Metro meetings, and they came out to the council meetings and the Plum Committee meetings. One of the things I should mention is Metro. Metro is a partner. We put them on the very beginning. But without Metro, we could not have continued this project. It was their land. And some of you know, when you work with Metro, they have a pretty, they give you 3 years to do the ENA, and then you have to sign the JDA within a certain period of time. If you don't, you might get a 1-year extension. You might get another extension. We got 5 extensions from Metro. After they were giving us 1-year extensions, and they were so supportive of this project and so wedded to seeing a supportive housing project in their joint development program, because up until Community Friends came in, and even for a while afterwards, there were no other supportive housing projects in Metro's line of joint development projects. So they really wanted to see this project succeed. And so they gave us multiple extensions, but ELAC's had folks coming all the time and working with us, so we should really appreciate it. As Anna mentioned, this project also will serve veterans, and so the Veterans of Foreign Wars post 1013, particularly in the guise of the leader of the post, Tony Zapata, came to all the meetings too, and he was very helpful in persuading continued support for the project. And I mentioned the Homeless Providers Alliance. They really kind of like with the wind beneath our wings in supporting us throughout this whole process. And finally, after 2 years of concerted effort with specifically the neighborhood council, we did get a 15-1 support from them. And so after that, we continuously kept them informed. You know, if there was a blip, we got sued, we went back to them, told them that. And we did it during open comments. We didn't schedule as an item on the agenda because there was really nothing else to report, but we kept them abreast. And when we finally broke free of the litigation, we decided to also work with them on a public art project. And so Anna, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So in 2021, we formed a committee with a couple of the members of the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council, along with a member from Metro's Arts and Design team. And we administered a public art RFP. It was really important to our team that we had community members from the Neighborhood Council, that they had a say in the public art that would be presented in their neighborhood. So we accepted proposals from different mediums of art, including painted murals and sculptures, and we received a few great proposals. We've decided to work with a local muralist named Fabian Deborah. He will be painting a beautiful mural on one of the large walls at the corner of Lorena and First Street. You'll see on the bottom left-hand side of this slide, there's a kind of concept rendering of what the mural might look like when the project is completed.
Yeah, I love the photo on the far right too. That was I think Plum Committee meeting where the supporters stood up because everyone couldn't speak, so they just asked if people supported the project. That was great. Next slide. Oh, that's you.
Okay, so Lorena is funded with a plethora of sources. Bank of America is our lender and investor on the project, so they're providing our construction and perm loans along with the tax credit equity. Our other soft financing sources include HHH, Cal HFA's SNHP, HCD's IIG, AHP, and foundation funds. We also secured 32 project-based vouchers from HACLA in 2021 for the units serving homeless households. So our total development costs are about 37 million, but we've also broken out just the residential costs for the project because a few million of the costs are associated with the commercial portion of the project. Obtaining financing is always super challenging for our projects, especially with how competitive it's getting. But I think one of the other main challenges in obtaining financing for us was that we had to put most financing applications on pause during the CEQA lawsuit.
That's why it was amazing when as soon as we got the lawsuit resolved, it was like, go, submit as many applications as you can. And to secure all of our soft financing in 12, 13 months was pretty incredible feat for the project management team at a community of friends. And so very excited.
So we also wanted to touch on kind of the ever-evolving design and program of Lorena over the course of 15 years. It's changed several times. So first, because the site dimensions differed from the information in the RFP, you'll see here that we originally submitted a project with a few less units, a different unit mix, and then we originally proposed 26,000 square feet of commercial space and 108 parking spaces on this project. By 2016, when we had confirmed the true site area, we were able to work with Metro to, one, increase the number of units, decrease the amount of commercial space, and also decrease the number of parking spaces. But after 2016, I would say between 2018 and 2021, We had to make some additional changes, mostly due to construction cost increases, and also some slight programmatic changes due to funding source availability. So you'll see on the right-hand side, our final design, we've kept the unit count at 49. The unit mix is slightly different. We've shaved down the commercial space to 7,500 square feet and also decreased the parking spaces to 53. And that's inclusive of residential and commercial parking spaces. And you'll see down here 2 iterations of the design. On the right-hand side, this is maybe back in 2016. And then this is the final project rendering.
Slide. Yeah.
All right, construction challenges. So I think the biggest challenge since construction closing has been the oil well reabandonment. So the oil well on our site is a dry well. It was drilled in 1949 as an exploratory well, and they didn't find any oil, and they actually plugged the well about a week after it was drilled in 1949. But since the well was so old, we couldn't really confirm some of the characteristics of the well until we opened the hole. And that presented some difficulties, for one, estimating the cost, and 2, knowing how long it was going to take to reabandon the well. And it turns out that the well conditions were pretty poor. When the well was plugged in 1949, the abandonment standards were very different. So, for example, our team found these giant wooden telephone poles that were stuffed down the well hole. That was their way of plugging the hole back in 1949. Our well was also an open hole well, meaning that the cement casing stopped after a few hundred feet. So those conditions made it much more difficult to abandon. And the reabandonment ended up taking, I think, twice as long as we had anticipated. In total, it took us about 6 months to reabandon the oil well before we could start construction. We touched on this a little bit already, but yeah, between about 2018 and 2021, I think every cost estimate we were getting back was more expensive than the last. So we had to work really closely with our design team to make some thoughtful VE decisions. And even during construction now, we're having to monitor costs very closely and work with our design team, construction manager, and GC to identify ways we can kind of minimize cost increases during construction. One other challenge we kind of wanted to highlight here is the haul route process. So this was a surprising challenge for us. We were required to go through the city's haul route approval process, which includes a public hearing, because the site is located in a hillside grading area, and we were also proposing to export more than 1,000 cubic yards of soil. So the haul route process was required in order to get permit approval, but it's a very long lead item. So I think it took us maybe 3 or 4 months to have the appropriate city departments review that application, and then it had to go through the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners and their public hearing process. So we were able to get the haul route approval by construction closing, but because of last minute changes in our shoring design and some unforeseen site conditions during grading, we actually had to go back and get a new haul route approval during grading. We found out
there was no amendment process. You have to apply all over again as a brand new permit.
Yeah, so yeah, we found out that there was no way to just revise an existing haul route. We had to go through that process from the beginning. So definitely something to flag for future projects if you are subject to the haul route process.
And by that time, the second time, because of COVID, the Building Safety Commission decided to have 1 meeting a month instead of 2 meetings a month. So that really was problematic as well. So
yeah,
that was a fun process.
Yeah. And the last item, just wanting to note, because this is a Metro-owned site, there is a more involved approval and coordination process with Metro's joint development team and also their construction staff during construction. So if you have a site that's on Metro-owned land, there's definitely like certain requirements that your general contractor is going to have to abide by, which just adds like an extra layer of planning and coordination between parties.
Oh, you have to talk about the middle picture. Go back.
Oh, I forgot, Dora. So it's kind of hard to see here in the middle picture, but this is our most recent construction challenge. The project has been experiencing some delays because of the on again, off again rain in December and January. And as the site was almost dry enough to start work again, a semi truck that was parked along the street outside of our project backed into the fire hydrant. And you can see in this middle photo, the fire hydrant exploding, and it actually flooded the site.
Again.
Again. That's our most recent challenge.
Yeah. Okay, the next one that you saw a little. So we had so many people who supported us and the project along the way. I mean, as soon as we cleared the CEQA lawsuit, it was like full steam ahead. From our very own project management team to, we have a bunch of former employees who worked on this project. I just ran into someone who says, "Oh, I was a project manager 10 years ago. Congratulations, you're in construction." But from the community, you see all the consultants who worked on this project. You can see, our fellow nonprofits from Downtown Women's Center to SCAMP, right? Project New Hope, Proyecto Pistora. We had 1736 Family Crisis Center, Union Station, Chrysalis, and then our own stalwarts, Esra Housing, Abode, everybody came out and supported the project. So we thank, if anybody who's watching this, we thank you for that. And a ton of consultants, former consultants, and then even the city team, from the city attorney's office to engineering, a ton of people at Metro. The county was incredibly supportive too. The first supervisorial district, past and present. We had an amazing legal team, the construction team, everybody. So when we had our groundbreaking, we actually published this and it was a handout at our event. So we want to thank everyone for being such a support of this project and supportive of us too. And I think the next slide talks about the significance of this project. So I want to assure you, in many ways, what happened to us will not happen to you all, because along the way, the first thing that happened was we had state legislation passed that prohibited local governments from asking developers to provide letters of support from their elected officials for their funding applications. So that is a state law. The other thing that happened was planning department no longer requires discretionary approval for on-menu density bonus incentives. So if you only had 2 on-menu things, you no longer will be exposed to potential project appeals or environmental challenges. And to reinforce that, we had both state and local laws passed since then to exempt supportive housing projects from CEQA review. AB 1197 was the first one. I think it was Assemblymember Miguel Santiago who knew about our project and played a role in that. And then there were several other iterations, AB 2162, and LA's own permanent supportive housing ordinance also passed. And then the final most important piece, to be honest with you, is the city council, at the urging of the city attorney, adopted an ordinance that now requires the city council to hear environmental appeals within 75 days. So it can no longer languish in a planning and land use management committee for over 410 days. So these things, I think, are protection for affordable housing projects, for supportive housing projects in particular. So we're glad to have contributed at least that piece of it to making our lives all a little bit easier. And I think we have a video. Do we have time? We want to show you a little video. I think it's like 3.5 minutes. Want to try that?
Yeah, let me see if it'll open. Okay, let me make sure my sound settings are correct.
What happened? Maybe.
All right. Let me know if you can hear this.
I would say that today's a pretty momentous day for a community of friends. We've been engaged in this project for so long. The long road to get to where we are, the tremendous support we got from the community. My heart's full, and I just can't wait to have the project open in 2024.
Definitely a triumph of perseverance over hardship.
I'm very proud to be part of the team and to help out, and it's so great to see how much perseverance the folks at ACOF have to bring this project together.
Every groundbreaking is a reason to celebrate, and but this one's special. There's definitely something different here. We've been working a long time.
It's been 10 long years that the community of Boyle Heights advocated for affordable housing.
One of the things that Dora mentioned today is that because of ACOF's leadership and this project in particular, the city's made a lot of changes so that another developer won't necessarily have to go through the pain that we did at times to pull this off. And I think there's been changes at the state level that will make this type of project easier, which is just so important for our community.
This project will provide 32 permanent supportive housing units and 16 affordable units right here atop the Metro Gold Line. We're now on track to surpass our original goal, building over 180 projects with nearly 13,000 new affordable and supportive housing units by 2026.
But 49 new units of housing for me is a big deal. And I think for the residents that are going to have a home here, and because it's so close to our transit stops. Projects like this are better. And better for me says bringing equitable transportation to every resident.
This project is an example of what we can achieve when we bring all of our resources together and solve an issue as complex and critical as homelessness. And as the mayor likes to say, which I think is reflective of the city, county, metro, and all the leaders here present today, we've done more than ever, we've done more than most, and the work continues. So thank you.
The vibrancy of this neighborhood must be preserved, and the people of Boyle Heights are at the center of that, and a community of friends listen to us.
But you don't just put a roof over their head, but you provide them with services that respect that individual and families, whoever it might be, but give them the assistance that they deserve.
Knowing that we're breaking ground on a project that this community wants, that serves the Metro, and is doing the right thing on behalf of our veterans.
Because to me, a veteran living on the street, homeless, that's wrong. They serve their country, they deserve better.
Dora read a letter from a community member talking about how happy she was now a couple of years later with what a good neighbor a community of friends was and their residents. And don't think about the struggle in 5 years, but think about the partnership that was built and what a great place it's going to be.
A Community of Friends is a nonprofit that's been serving our Southern California communities for over 30 years.
We know that our work at a Community of Friends is not just about building affordable homes, but it's also providing that critically important wraparound services that's needed to help our tenants stay stable in housing.
We know from our years of experience that people who have been homeless can, with an affordable home and on-site supportive services that wrap around their needs, can regain the skills necessary to lead independent, productive lives.
And because of our unique perspective and experience, the Community of Friends is confident in our ability to successfully serve the individuals and families who will soon call Lorena Plaza home.
That's it.
All right, thanks, Dora and Anna. So we do have a few questions, and as a reminder, if you have questions for our guests today, please put them in the Q&A box. So I'll just remind you guys there was one question in the chat, so I'll go ahead and read it out. Omar asked, did more units get added to the ground floor with front door steps for residents to access from the sidewalk, or do they have to go through the lobby?
Anna?
So the difference between the design when we submitted for the Metro RFP in 2006, 2007, we were able to increase the number of units to 49 by 2016. I think those units were added throughout the building. There aren't any units that have front door stoops at Lorena. So the residents can enter the project in several ways, but there is a ground floor lobby entrance on Lorena Street for the residents to enter through.
Got it. Thank you. Madi asks, how long did it take to settle the lawsuit?
To settle the lawsuit, probably 3 to 4 months. So after we won the lawsuit, there, I think within 60 days there was an appeal, and then from the time of the appeal to the settlement was probably about 4 months.
Okay. And Mara Johnson asks, was the underlying driving force behind the Mercado opposition the tenants or something to do with the physical structure, such as height, shade, or parking?
So what they publicly said at hearings and committee meetings was the opposition to the tenants. It was consistently people, like there was one in particular where I remember they said, did you know there's going to be mentally ill people living here? So those are the type of comments they got at the public hearing. However, they couldn't use those arguments in the CEQA lawsuit. So in the CEQA lawsuit, it was related to height and shade and noise. So they essentially used the standard CEQA review process and what people looked at as the basis for their litigation.
Got it. And Elizabeth asks, what happens if a project takes longer than 75 days to go through City Council?
I think I have to read the ordinance again, but I believe it's actually deemed approved. So, but I have to double check on that. That's a good question. It'll be in the ordinance, but I don't remember offhand.
Okay. Omar asks again about if you can share the capital stack, but I think you had that on one of the initial slides.
Yeah.
Maybe Anna, you could go back to that. There you go. Do we have any other questions?
There was one source we should mention. Where was it? Where is the DMH funding? Oh, we had October on there. So that was actually a very early commitment that DMH had made. It was the original MHSA funds, and I guess they call it SNHP, but they made that commitment very early, and DMH also stuck with us the whole time of the protracted entitlement process and such. When I say a long time, I think they made, maybe I shouldn't say, but they made the commitment a long time ago. They reconfirmed it and solidified it in October, but we checked in with them every few years to make sure they wouldn't pull the funding, and they didn't. So DMH was another critical partner of ours at the very beginning.
Mike asks, are you able to provide any detail about what made the project competitive for IIG?
Oh gosh, this is actually one of the funding apps that I didn't work on for this project. So I'm not sure I can really speak to the IIG question.
And either, sorry, Mike.
Let's see. What are the plans for the commercial space on the first floor?
Oh yeah, so that's so we are early on when we were working with the community, one of the things that we did was a tour of a very similar project. When I say similar, I meant like 49 units, commercial on the ground floor, and then it was a mix of permanent supportive housing and regular affordable housing. Because at Lorena it's 32 PSH and 16. I do my math right, 12, 16, that's not. So we gave them a tour, and at that particular other location in Lincoln Heights, we had a early childhood education center. So the community was really interested in that, but we ended up not being able to do that because of site constraints related to the play area for the early learning center. But that actually ended up resulting in some conversations with the community. There were comments about wanting a mix of community uses, like maybe even like a Y of some sort. So essentially what we're hoping to do is a combination of community serving space, like a Y or something of that nature, as well as some commercial opportunities for the community. So it's a combination. We probably will be starting pretty soon on that component, but we haven't started it yet. But the thought was it's going to be a combination of both.
Great, thank you. Kevin asked, was there any pushback from the community about the reduction of parking from the original plan?
There was a little bit, but that wasn't, again, I think Mara had asked, it wasn't an issue necessarily. It was interesting. It was Metro who wanted us to have a lot of parking spaces in the beginning. That's why we had like 108. And it was before Metro really looked at, I guess, reduction of parking as a key component of energy, greenhouse gas reduction. And then they realized that we were really in close proximity to the public transportation lines. So we actually didn't, I think there were some people blinking at it, but then they realized with the 49 units and where we were located, it wasn't necessarily going to be an issue. Now, El Mercado was very concerned that we would have people parking in their parking lots. So one of the things we did agree to do, I think it's in our entitlement approvals too, was that we would just put signs and be really clear with our tenants that they could not park there and that they would be towed if in fact they did. And the way to identify our tenants' cars is that we were going to put tenants who had cars in our buildings would get a sticker of some sort to identify themselves. So that way El Mercado can easily identify them.
All right. I'm not seeing any more questions. I think we'll wrap it up there. Dora or Anna, anything else to add?
No. Thank you for your interest.
Yeah, well, thank you to you both for taking the time to share all these details about Lorena Plaza, and we're really excited to see it move forward after all these years of hurdles. So we'll have more sessions like this throughout the year, and we'll send out the recording of this to everyone that registered. So you should get that by tomorrow. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.